Almost every multiplayer game today has seasons. A new battle pass, new skins, and maybe a new character or weapon. And for a few weeks, the game feels fresh again. But then, something strange happens. You notice that the game itself didn't really change. You're still playing the exact same matches, on the exact same maps, with the exact same strategies. The only thing that changed is what you unlock. Most live service seasons are not made to improve the game. They're designed to just extend the grind. But here's the weird part. There actually is a way to design seasons that makes players more invested, more engaged, and sometimes even more addicted to the game. And by the end of this video, you will understand why one specific design trick in Hunt Showdown is dangerously good at keeping players hooked. If you look across modern live service games, the structure is almost identical. A season launches with a battle pass, a set of cosmetics, and maybe a small gameplay addition. Games like Apex Legends, Warzone or Overwatch 2 all follow some version of that formula. You grind levels, you unlock skins, and you collect cosmetics. But the actual match experience doesn't really change. The rotations stay the same, the maps play the same, the strategies barely change. And after a few weeks, the season stops feeling like new content. It just feels like a longer progression bar. This is where seasons quietly change their purpose. They stop being design tools and start becoming retention systems. Their job is to simply keep you playing. And strangely enough, that works, but it creates a long-term problem. Because when seasons stop experimenting with gameplay, the game itself also stops evolving. And that is exactly why one game does something completely different. But wait a second, every game is doing some seasons now, yeah? Why you say Hunt is different? For me, it looks like the same thing. That is actually the right question. Because when Hunt Showdown runs seasonal events, the developers are not just asking what rewards should players unlock. The question is something much more dangerous in terms of game design. What happens if we temporarily break the game? Because that's essentially what Hunt seasons do. They introduce systems that completely change how matches play. Take the Inferno event as example. Parts of the map were literally on fire. Entire compounds became inaccessible. Sidelines changed, rotations changed, even how teams approach boss fights changed. Suddenly, the environment became part of the strategy, because players weren't just grinding progression. They were learning a completely different version of the map. Then there was the hellborn roaming boss. Instead of bosses sitting inside of compounds, you suddenly had a threat moving across the map, which meant players had to track it, predict where it might be, and then decide if you want to intercept it or avoid it completely. The match flow became far less predictable, and that unpredictability is extremely valuable in competitive games, because it forces players to constantly adapt. But here's where things get interesting. These systems aren't just seasonal gimmicks, they're experiments. You mean they just put mechanics in the game and see what happens? This sounds a bit, risikohaft, ne? Exactly. Hunt seasons function like live testing environments. Developers introduce mechanics during an event, and then they watch what players actually do with them. And here's the critical part. If a system works, it stays. And if it doesn't, it disappears by the end of the event. Which means something really unusual happens. The seasons don't just give players new content, it quietly also tests the future of the game. And that design trick is much more powerful than you think. Because it creates something that most live service games actually try to avoid. Not being afraid to change the complete game. And this leads to a strange design paradox. The best way to keep players engaged long term might be to actually destabilize the game for a few weeks. Not break it permanently, but shake it just enough so players have to relearn the game without changing the fundamentals. And that's where most seasonal systems fail, because they protect the game from change instead of using seasons to experiment with it. Bad seasons extend progression, good seasons extend possibility. Most seasons ask the players to do the same thing just for new rewards. But great seasons ask the players to solve new problems, new rotations, new risks, new strategies. And when developers treat seasons as experimental phases, they gain something incredibly valuable. Not in internal playtests, although it might be another point. And also not in controlled environments, but in chaos in actual multiplayer games. And the mechanics that survive the chaos become part of the permanent game. Which means the game slowly evolves over time. Not just cosmetically, but mechanically. Ah, okay. So most seasons is basically only grinding skins, but Hunt is using seasons to, how do you say, redesign the whole Spiel a bit, yes? Exactly. And once you start noticing the difference, you start seeing how rare it actually is. By the way, if you enjoy short, high-density analysis like this one, focus on why structure creates advantage and where hesitation quietly loses fights. That's exactly what this channel does. Subscribing makes sense. In most games, new seasons just mean new skins, new rewards, and the same gameplay. But when seasons are used as experiments, a new season can mean something much more interesting. A peek into the future of the game. The best seasons don't just give players something to unlock. They give players something to figure out. A new mechanic, a new threat, a new layer of strategy. Because when a season truly works, the game doesn't just feel refreshed. It feels unfamiliar again. And that's the real goal of live service games. Not just longer grinds, not bigger battle passes, but a game that slowly evolves with every season. One experiment at a time. Because the most powerful seasons are not the ones that just keep adding cosmetics, they're the ones that make the game feel new again.